July 7th, 1968, 11:47 a.m., Harlem Hospital morgue. Dr. Raymond Carter stood over a body on the examination table. The body was that of Bumpy Johnson, officially deceased at 6:23 a.m. that morning. Cause of death listed as cardiac arrest, massive heart attack. Bumpy had collapsed at Wells Restaurant on 7th Avenue. Paramedics had arrived within 4 minutes, had attempted resuscitation, had transported him to Harlem Hospital. Doctors had worked on him for 37 minutes, had declared him dead at 6:23 a.m. Bumpy Johnson, age 62, Harlem's most powerful figure for 4 decades. Gone. Dr. Carter was 51 years old, chief medical examiner for Harlem Hospital, 23 years of experience. He'd performed approximately 2,000 autopsies, had seen everything. Gunshot wounds, stabbings, overdoses, natural deaths. Nothing surprised him anymore. Nothing disturbed his professional composure. He approached each autopsy methodically, scientifically, emotionally detached. This was his job. Document cause of death, collect evidence if needed, provide official records for death certificates. Bumpy Johnson's autopsy was required by law. Any death outside a hospital setting required examination, even though the cause seemed obvious, even though witnesses had seen him collapse, even though doctors had documented cardiac arrest. Protocol demanded autopsy. Carter had been assigned the case at 8:43 a.m., had reviewed preliminary reports, had examined external features. Now, at 11:47 a.m., had reviewed preliminary reports, had examined external features. Now, at 11:47 a.m., he was beginning the internal examination. Carter made the standard Y incision at 11:49 a.m., started at each shoulder, met at the sternum, extended down to the pubic bone, reflected the skin and muscle, exposed the chest cavity, used rib cutters to open the rib cage, standard procedure. He'd done this thousands of times, expected to find what cardiac arrest typically showed: enlarged heart, blocked arteries, damaged tissue, clear evidence explaining the death. But at 11:52 a.m., Carter found something he'd never encountered in 23 years. Something impossible, something that made him stop cutting, made him stare, made him question whether he was hallucinating. Sewn to the inside of the rib cage, attached with surgical thread, was a small waterproof pouch, approximately 4 in x 6 in, medical-grade material, the kind used for protecting documents during surgery. Someone had surgically implanted this pouch inside the body's chest cavity, had sewn it carefully to avoid detection during external examination. Carter's hands trembled slightly. This was unprecedented. Bodies didn't have pouches sewn inside them. Not in natural deaths, not in legitimate medical situations. This was intentional, deliberate. Someone had placed this here, someone who knew the body would be autopsied. Someone who wanted the medical examiner to find it. Carter used forceps to carefully detach the pouch, cut the surgical threads, removed it from the chest cavity, set it on the examination tray. The pouch was sealed, completely waterproof, designed to protect contents from bodily fluids, from decomposition, from anything that might damage what was inside. Carter opened the seal at 11:54 a.m. His hands were shaking more now. He had no idea what he was about to find. Evidence, drugs, money, a message. The seal broke with a soft click. Carter reached inside, pulled out a single piece of paper, folded white standard notebook paper. He unfolded it carefully. The note was handwritten, black ink, clear handwriting, not rushed, deliberate, careful. Carter read the words at 11:55 a.m. 5 words that made his blood freeze, that made his professional detachment evaporate. That made him understand he was part of something far more complex than a standard autopsy. The note read, "I'm still alive. Check your family." Carter read the note 3 times, trying to understand, trying to process. The body on his table was supposed to be Bumpy Johnson. Official identification had confirmed this. Witnesses at the restaurant had confirmed this. Paramedics had confirmed this. Hospital doctors had confirmed this. Everyone agreed this was Bumpy Johnson dead from cardiac arrest. But the note said otherwise. Said, "I'm still alive." Said this body wasn't Bumpy. Said Bumpy was somewhere else alive. The second sentence was more disturbing. "Check your family." Carter's mind raced. His wife Sarah, his 2 children, Thomas age 17, Rebecca age 14. They were home, should be home. It was Sunday morning. They'd been there when Carter left for work at 7:43 a.m. He'd kissed Sarah goodbye, had told the kids he'd be home for dinner. They should be safe, should be fine. But the note said, "Check your family." Said it like a warning, like a threat, like something had happened. Carter pulled off his gloves at 11:57 a.m., walked to the wall phone, hands shaking badly now, dialed his home number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. No answer. Sarah always answered by the 3rd ring. Always. Carter's heart was pounding. He hung up, dialed again. Same result. 5 rings, no answer. 6 rings, 7 rings, 8 rings. Still no answer. Carter slammed the phone down, ran to his office, grabbed his car keys, left the morgue, left the body, left everything. Had to get home. Had to check his family. The drive from Harlem Hospital to Carter's house in the Bronx took 17 minutes. Should have taken 27. Carter drove dangerously, ran red lights, exceeded speed limits, didn't care about traffic laws, only cared about getting home, about finding his family. The note had said, "Check your family." Said it like they were in danger, like something had happened to them. Carter's mind created terrible scenarios. Kidnapping, murder, torture. All because he was performing an autopsy. All because he'd found a note. All because someone wanted him to understand something. Carter arrived at his house at 12:14 p.m., parked badly, ran to the front door. It was locked. He fumbled with keys, dropped them, picked them up, finally got the door open, ran inside. "Sarah, Thomas, Rebecca, where are you?" Silence. Complete silence. The house felt empty. Wrong. Carter ran through every room. Kitchen, living room, dining room, bedrooms, bathrooms, nobody. Empty. His family was gone. He found evidence in the kitchen, signs of struggle. A chair knocked over, Sarah's coffee mug shattered on the floor. Her reading glasses broken. Someone had been here. Had taken his family. Had done exactly what the note implied would happen if Carter didn't check his family. But he had checked. He'd come home immediately. Where were they? What had happened? Who had done this? Carter found a second note on the kitchen table at 12:19 p.m. Different paper, same handwriting. The note read, "Dr. Carter, your family is safe, unharmed. They are with my associates in a secure location. They will remain safe as long as you follow instructions exactly. First, return to the morgue. Second, complete the autopsy. Third, conclude that the body on your table is Bumpy Johnson. Fourth, determine cause of death as cardiac arrest. Fifth, sign the death certificate. Sixth, file all official paperwork. Seventh, tell nobody about this note. Tell nobody about your family situation. Tell nobody what you found in the chest cavity. If you comply completely, your family will be returned to you tonight at 8 p.m. If you deviate from these instructions in any way, you will never see them again. This is not negotiable. This is not optional. Do exactly what I've told you. Your family's lives depend on your compliance. Bumpy Johnson." Carter collapsed into a chair. He understood now completely. The body in his morgue wasn't Bumpy Johnson. Carter collapsed into a chair. He understood now completely. The body in his morgue wasn't Bumpy Johnson. It was someone else, someone who looked similar, someone who died, someone whose body had been prepared, someone who'd had identification planted, someone who'd had a waterproof pouch surgically implanted with a note designed to be found during autopsy. The entire death was staged, elaborate, planned, designed to make the world believe Bumpy Johnson was dead when he was actually alive. And Carter was the key. The medical examiner, the person who would sign the death certificate, the person whose authority would make the false death official, the person who had to be controlled, had to be manipulated, had to be threatened. Bumpy had kidnapped Carter's family to ensure compliance, had created a situation where Carter had no choice. Either declare the false body as Bumpy and get his family back, or refuse and lose them forever. Carter sat in his kitchen for 11 minutes, 12:14 p.m. to 12:25 p.m., processing everything, understanding his situation. He had no options, no alternatives, no way to save his family except through compliance. He couldn't call police. The note had been explicit. Tell nobody. Any deviation meant never seeing his family again. He couldn't refuse to sign the death certificate. That would also trigger consequences. He had to do exactly what the note demanded: return to morgue, complete autopsy, declare body as Bumpy, sign certificate, file paperwork, remain silent. Only then would his family be safe. Carter drove back to Harlem Hospital at 12:27 p.m., returned to the morgue at 12:43 p.m. The body was still on the examination table, still opened, still waiting for completion. Carter put on fresh gloves, continued the autopsy, examined the heart, found evidence of cardiac disease, blocked arteries, enlarged chambers, everything consistent with heart attack. Whoever this body belonged to had actually died of cardiac arrest. That part wasn't faked. The death was real. The identity was false. Carter completed the internal examination by 1:37 p.m., documented everything, wrote detailed notes: cause of death, cardiac arrest due to coronary artery disease. Identity: Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, age 62, all official, all accurate except for the identity. The medical findings were legitimate. The person on the table had died of heart attack. That person just wasn't Bumpy Johnson. But Carter's paperwork said it was. His signature would make it official. Dr. Carter signed the death certificate at 2:47 p.m. His hand trembled as he wrote, name, Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, date of death, July 7th, 1968, time of death, 6:23 a.m. Cause of death, cardiac arrest due to coronary artery disease. His signature made it official, made the lie legal, made the world believe Bumpy Johnson was dead when Carter knew otherwise, when Carter had found a note saying the opposite. When Carter's family was being held to ensure his cooperation, Carter filed all paperwork by 3:23 p.m. Death certificate submitted to the city. Autopsy report completed. Medical examiner's findings documented. Everything required by law. Everything accurate except for one detail: the identity. The body on his table had died of heart attack. That was medically true. But the body wasn't Bumpy Johnson. That was the lie Carter had been forced to perpetuate. The lie his family's safety depended on. Carter went home at 4:17 p.m. His house was still empty, his family still gone. He sat in the living room, waited. The note had said, 8 p.m. had said his family would be returned if he complied. Carter had complied completely, had done everything demanded, had signed false documents, had committed fraud, had violated his professional ethics, had broken laws, all to save his family. Now he had to wait, had to trust that whoever had taken them would keep their promise. The waiting was torture. 4:17 p.m. to 8 p.m., 3 hours and 43 minutes. Carter couldn't eat, couldn't focus, could only sit, stare at the clock. Wonder if his compliance would actually result in his family's return. Wonder if he'd been manipulated. Wonder if he'd signed false documents for nothing. Wonder if he'd ever see Sarah, Thomas, and Rebecca again. At exactly 8 p.m., Carter heard a car outside. Heard doors opening, heard voices. He ran to the front door, threw it open. His family was walking up the driveway. Sarah, Thomas, Rebecca, all three, unharmed, alive, safe. Carter ran to them, embraced them. Sarah was crying. The children were shaken but okay. Behind them, a black sedan was pulling away. driving off into the night, the people who held them, the people who'd returned them as promised. Gone before Carter could see them clearly. Sarah spoke first. Her voice was trembling. "Raymond, what happened? These men came to the house this morning, said they needed us to come with them, said you'd understand, said we'd be safe if we cooperated. They kept us in an apartment somewhere, gave us food, didn't hurt us, just held us. Then an hour ago they said we could go home, brought us back. What is this about? Why did they take us?" Carter couldn't tell her the truth. The note had been explicit. Tell nobody, not even family, not even his wife. The secret had to remain complete, had to remain protected, or the consequences would return. "I don't know," Carter lied. "I don't understand why they took you, but you're safe now. You're home. That's what matters." The lie tasted bitter, wrong, but necessary. Absolutely necessary. Carter kept the secret for 27 years, from July 7, 1968 until October 12, 1995. 27 years of carrying knowledge that Bumpy Johnson's death had been faked, that the funeral had been for someone else, that the obituaries had documented a lie, that the death certificate he'd signed was fraudulent. Carter had violated everything he believed in professionally, had committed crimes, had enabled deception, all because his family had been threatened, all because he'd had no choice. During those 27 years, Carter never spoke about what he'd found, never mentioned the note, never revealed his family had been kidnapped, never explained why he'd signed false documents. He continued his career, rose to director of medical examiners for New York City, retired in 1987 at age 70, lived quietly, carried the secret, bore the weight of knowing he'd helped fake one of the most significant deaths in Harlem's history. But in October 1995, Carter was dying. Pancreatic cancer, terminal, weeks to live. He was 78 years old, lying in a hospital bed, morphine managing his pain, his family around him, Sarah, Thomas, Rebecca, grandchildren he'd watched grow up. He knew this was his last chance, last opportunity to reveal what he'd carried for 27 years, last moment to tell the truth before taking it to his grave. On October 12, 1995, Carter called for a tape recorder. Had Thomas bring one from home. Carter wanted his confession recorded, wanted evidence, wanted the truth documented before he died. Thomas set up the recorder at 2:37 p.m. Carter began speaking at 2:43 p.m. His voice was weak. The cancer had devastated him, but his mind was clear. His memory was perfect. He remembered everything about July 7, 1968. Carter's confession lasted 47 minutes. He described the autopsy, the waterproof pouch, the note inside. "I'm still alive. Check your family." He described rushing home, finding his family gone, finding the second note, the demands, the threat, the impossible choice between professional ethics and family safety. He described signing the false death certificate, filing fraudulent paperwork, waiting for his family's return, their safe arrival at 8:01 p.m. Then Carter revealed something he'd learned years later, something that explained who the body actually was. In 1972, 4 years after Bumpy's supposed death, Carter had been contacted. A letter, anonymous, no return address. The letter explained everything. The body on Carter's examination table had been Richard Morrison, a 61-year-old man, terminal lung cancer, stage 4, weeks to live. Morrison had been in Bumpy's organization for 30 years, loyal, devoted. When Bumpy had needed someone to die in his place, Morrison had volunteered. Morrison had agreed to be the body, had agreed to have the waterproof pouch surgically implanted before his death, had agreed to carry identification that would make authorities believe he was Bumpy, had agreed to all of it willingly. He was dying anyway, wanted his death to serve a purpose, wanted to help Bumpy one final time, wanted his loyalty to mean something beyond his own life. The letter had explained how Morrison died. Natural death. The lung cancer had killed him on July 6, 1968, Late evening, Bumpy's doctor had been present, had declared him dead, had immediately transported the body to a prepared location, had staged the scene at Wells' restaurant, had called paramedics, had made everything look like Bumpy had collapsed during breakfast. The heart attack was real. Morrison's heart had stopped, but it had stopped hours before the restaurant scene, had stopped from cancer, not from the staged collapse. The letter also revealed that Bumpy Johnson had lived for 3 more years after his supposed death, had remained hidden, had lived quietly under a different identity, had left New York entirely, had spent those 3 years in Cuba, protected, anonymous, safe. He'd finally died for real in 1971, age 65. Actual heart attack this time, actual death, actual end. But by then, the world had already mourned him, had already accepted his death, had already moved on. The real death went unnoticed, unmarked, unknown. Carter finished his confession at 3:30 p.m., stopped the tape, looked at his family. They were stunned, silent. Sarah finally spoke. "Raymond, you've been carrying this for 27 years. You never told me, never told anyone." Carter's response was quiet, filled with the pain of decades of secrecy. "I couldn't." The note said, "Tell nobody. They took you, took our children, returned you safely." But the threat remained. If I spoke, if I revealed anything, I believed they'd come back. I couldn't risk that. I chose your safety over truth. I'd make the same choice again. Thomas took the tape, had it transcribed, gave copies to journalists, to historians, to people who studied Harlem's criminal history. The revelation shocked everyone who heard it. Bumpy Johnson's death in 1968 had been one of the most documented events in Harlem. Thousands had attended his funeral. Newspapers had run obituaries. Historical records had marked it as the end of an era, all of it based on a lie, based on a body that wasn't Bumpy, based on a medical examiner who'd been threatened into compliance. Historians verified Carter's story, found Richard Morrison in records, confirmed he'd worked for Bumpy's organization, confirmed he died of lung cancer in 1968, confirmed the timeline matched, found evidence that Bumpy had indeed gone to Cuba, found records of someone matching his description living there between 1968 and 1971. Found documentation of a death in Havana in 1971. Everything Carter had revealed checked out. Everything was verifiable. The confession was true. The story changed how people understood Bumpy's legacy. He hadn't died in 1968 at the height of his power. He'd faked his death, had lived 3 more years, had escaped the violence and chaos of Harlem's criminal world, had died peacefully in Cuba. The dramatic 1968 death had been theater, elaborate, planned, executed perfectly, using a loyal associate who volunteered his own death, using a medical examiner who'd been forced to cooperate through family threats, using the system's trust in official documentation. Dr. Raymond Carter died on October 19, 1995, 7 days after his confession, age 78, pancreatic cancer. He'd lived long enough to tell the truth, to reveal what he'd carried for 27 years, to explain why he'd signed false documents, to clear his conscience before death. His obituary mentioned his distinguished career, his contributions to forensic medicine, his leadership of New York's medical examiner system. It didn't mention the secret, didn't mention Bumpy Johnson, didn't mention the greatest deception of his career. Richard Morrison never received proper recognition during his life. His family thought he'd died of cancer in a hospital, never knew he'd volunteered to be Bumpy's body double, never knew he'd been buried as Bumpy Johnson, never knew thousands had attended a funeral they thought was for Harlem's crime boss, but was actually for their father, husband, brother. Morrison's sacrifice remained secret until Carter's confession. Then historians honored him, recognized his loyalty, acknowledged his role in one of the most elaborate death fakes in criminal history. The waterproof pouch that had contained the note was never found. Carter had destroyed it after reading the note, had burned it, eliminated evidence. The note itself had been destroyed. Similarly, no physical evidence remained except Carter's testimony, except the tape recording, except the verification that historians had conducted. The story relied on Carter's credibility, on his reputation, on the fact that he had no reason to lie on his deathbed, had every reason to clear his conscience truthfully. July 7, 1968, 11:52 a.m. Dr. Raymond Carter found a waterproof pouch inside a chest cavity, found a note saying, "I'm still alive, check your family," found his family kidnapped, found himself forced to sign fraudulent documents, found himself complicit in the fake death of Bumpy Johnson. The discovery changed his life, burdened him with secrets for 27 years, made him question his ethics, his choices, his priorities. But Carter had chosen correctly, had chosen family over truth, had chosen his wife and children over professional integrity. Most people who knew the full story agreed. Faced with the same choice, they'd have done the same. Sign false documents, keep the secret, protect their family, accept the burden. Carter had been victimized, manipulated, forced into an impossible situation. He'd responded the only way any father and husband would respond. He'd saved his family. The rest was consequence he'd learned to live with. October 12th, 1995, 2:43 p.m. Carter's deathbed confession revealed everything. Revealed the truth about Bumpy's death, about Morrison's sacrifice, about the note inside the body, about the kidnapping, about the 27 years of silence. The confession freed Carter. Let him die with truth told. Let him pass the burden to history. Let others decide what the story meant, what it revealed about loyalty, about sacrifice, about the price of truth, about the cost of silence, about what people will do when forced to choose between ethics and family. Carter had chosen, had lived with that choice, had finally revealed it before death claimed him. The secret had survived 27 years, had died with Carter, had entered history, had become legend, the note inside the body, the impossible message. "I'm still alive. Check your family." Words that changed everything for everyone who heard them, words that proved Bumpy Johnson's death was theater.